يسعدنا الآن أن نستمع إلى كلمات من ممثلي المجتمع الدولي، ونبدأ الآن بكلمة السيدة أمينة محمد، نائب الأمين العام للأمم المتحدة ورئيس مجموعة الأمم المتحدة للتنمية المستدامة، فلتتفضل.
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Your Excellency President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi, Your Excellencies, Ministers and Heads of Delegations, Senior Leaders, Special Envoy John Kerry, the United Nations, Development Organizations, partners, friends, civil society, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum. I would like to sincerely thank President al-Sisi and the government of Egypt for bringing us together with the ECA, in particular Ministers of Finance, before COP27. With a clear message. It's time for implementation at scale and with a sense of urgency. I would like to applaud the leadership of Foreign Minister Sami Shukri for setting the ambition for COP27. We are meeting as many parts of the world are simultaneously facing the fury of climate change and the cost of living crisis. Lives and livelihoods are being destroyed. Climate action is stalling. The Sustainable Development Goals are on life support. International solidarity is on vacation. Today, we must go beyond our statements and action with concrete and viable initiatives with clear pathways to investments. Developing countries need to know which financial instruments are effectively available to support their transition to sustainable and climate-resilient economies. Developed countries must deliver on the $100 billion annual commitment and make up for the years of falling short. This is key to restoring trust between countries and in the multilateral system, making good on the handshake for solidarity. It is also a much-needed step towards a more ambitious post-2025 climate finance goal. The needs are immense. In Africa alone, more than $500 billion will be required to achieve universal energy access by 2030. By then, the climate finance adaptation gap for the continent may reach $440 billion. The Secretary General has repeatedly called to increase and allocate half of climate finance to adaptation. The Glasgow decision urges developed countries to collectively double adaptation finance levels to $40 billion. But we still need a clear roadmap on how this will be delivered by COP27. Dear colleagues and friends, we also need to change the way that we operate. Financial institutions must work directly with you and other partners that know the situation in every country and become more responsive. We need to localize climate solutions and investments at the grassroots level within the holistic framework of the Sustainable Development Goals. And in this regard, I'm encouraged by the efforts made by Egypt in terms of the National Initiative for Green and Smart Projects at the governorates, which aims to produce a localized investment map for Egypt. Climate-resilient investments must become the new normal, strengthening the delivery on the SDGs. I welcome the Nawafi country platform that has been presented us today by the government of Egypt and its partners. We welcome also the leadership of our Minister Rania, who is mobilizing the international community to get behind a pipeline of programs and projects that will make life different and will achieve the SDGs. The platform puts Egypt's 2050 country climate strategy in implementation mode for accelerating the transition to a climate-resilient net zero future during this decade. Through coordination, both the country level and among international partners, we can deliver development outcomes at the pace and the scale that is required. The UN system stands ready to accompany Egypt and support the implementation of NAFI. The same type of innovation cooperation is needed to ensure that the Congo Forest Basin, an invaluable carbon sink, and its populations are protected and continue to provide the much-needed ecosystem services. This is also in the spirit of our adaptation pipeline accelerator, to demonstrate that collaboration on the ground minimizes duplication and puts countries in the driving seat. For developing countries, the cost of adaptation is 5 to 10 times greater than the financial support they can count on. International financial institutions and development banks must step up to the challenge of implementation. That means supplying much-needed adaptation finance, simplifying the procedures of ease of access, and ensuring fast delivery. At the same time, we must also foster investment opportunities that will attract financing from the private sector across the globe and build resilience. The COP27 presidency, the UN climate champions, and the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa are working tirelessly to identify those projects with huge potential for private investment. But we must go beyond selected projects. We must urgently reform the multilateral development banks to take into account climate risk and fully support green transitions in developing countries. Shareholders must steer a structural transformation of the financing architecture. Excellencies, developing countries cannot make urgent investments on climate action and SDGs without the necessary fiscal space. This means urgently tackling debt. In the context of COVID-19 and global instability, 15 African countries are at risk of external and public debt distress, and 6 are already facing debt distress. African countries are scheduled to pay $64 billion in debt repayments in 2022 alone, twice the amount that is available in bilateral aid. While some countries will need comprehensive assistance to restructure their debt, we must improve the multilateral framework for debt for climate adaptation swaps. I'm encouraged to see that the Sustainable Debt Hub during this forum will provide a link between debt issuances and key performance indicators addressing climate resilience. Finally, sustainable investment in climate finance at a pace and scale requires private investment. We need a well-functioning and transparent carbon market that matches the scale of climate challenge and provides valuable financing opportunities for developing countries. I hope that tomorrow's roundtable on just financing, from Glasgow to Sharm el-Sheikh, a guidebook for just financing, will provide some practical guidance on unlocking the trillions held by private investors. Affordable and reliable investments from the private sector also require de-risking investments in those countries which are most vulnerable. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, effective implementation depends on all of us in this room, on mitigation, on adaptation, on loss and damage, and on finance, for which we will be addressing in the coming days. Future generations will not remember today's speeches, but they will remember our actions. Let us rise to the occasion and together build a resilient and sustainable future, leaving absolutely no one behind. I thank you.